In deep space, Grievous led the Separatist fleet, forming HMPs and Hyena droid bombers into strike groups and launched an all-out attack. During an ambush by Grievous, the Republic forces were quickly defeated, intent on capturing or killing his arch-rival. Gunships dropped B-1 and B-2 battle droids, as Grievous trailed behind in his Sheathipede-class shuttle, and then boarded Obi-Wan Kenobi's command ship without losing a single capital ship. There he tore through the clone trooper ranks, pinning one clone to the ground and crushing the clone's neck with his foot. He then dueled Kenobi, overpowering him by kicking him back against a Republic gunship, while clone troopers and droids battled around them. However, Kenobi managed to escape and abandon his ship, rigging it to self-destruct and forcing Grievous to retreat, abandoning all the useful information in the ship's memory banks. With Kenobi overwhelmed, the entire system was now under Separatist control. Sometime later, Grievous and several droid transports landed on Florum, unloading rows of battle droids that began to march, followed by commando droids and super battle droids parading in front of him. When Grievous and his droids entered the hall where the pirates were feasting, Onaka greeted the cyborg and invited him to join in the fun. Grievous ignored his words, grabbed his coat collar, and informed him that Florum was now under Separatist control and that the pirate himself had a new master. He threw Onaka to the floor and displayed a hologram of Dooku, who reminded Onaka of their last encounter when he was his prisoner and tried to bargain him off. Despite Onaka's protests, Grievous ordered the droids to escort him to his cell. Grievous was soon informed that Ahsoka Tano, her fellow Jedi younglings, and a group of pirates had freed Onaka, fought through the droid forces, and fled the outpost. He then ordered his tanks to level the prison section. As they were escaping, Grievous pursued them in his combat speeder, aided by 3 commando droids piloting Staps, and then boarded their WL-05 battle tank, exchanging several blows with the Padawan. When they crashed, the general made his way back, crawled on all fours, and gathered his prey. But Onaka and Katuni arrived with Slave 1, and the younglings were able to jump aboard. Grievous then fought Tano, with their blades whirling in blurred circles. Ahsoka used the Force to drive him back, but he then stabbed his 4 lightsabers into the ground as he skidded backward, slowing himself. Grievous launched himself at her, but she flipped in the air, proving to be a much more formidable opponent than in their previous encounter. They fought with their lightsabers crossed again and again. Grievous grabbed Ahsoka with his clawed feet, hurled her in the air, and smashed her down as he charged, his blades spinning rapidly as she kept rolling before leaping onto her feet and meeting his 4 blades with her too. An exhausted Ahsoka shoved Grievous hard enough, then jumped over him and fled, leaping onto the ship. Hondo opened fire on Grievous but was forced to retreat when armored assault tanks arrived, leaving Grievous to laugh in victory. Grievous's assault on Hondo Onaka's pirate base on Florum all but destroyed Onaka's power base. The pirates retreated for a while, but when the Separatists lost interest and left, Onaka's crew returned to control a planet that was hardly useless to anyone else. Later, Grievous sent an encoded transmission to other members of the Confederacy, but it was intercepted by the Jedi Council. Unfortunately, Republic intelligence couldn't break the new encryption technology used in the transmission, leading to fears of an upcoming major attack. To decipher the message, the Republic deployed D-Squad, a group of Republic droids, to a Separatist dreadnought to retrieve an encryption module. Near the war's end, a large Kyber crystal was discovered, and Toril Blum, the governor of Pau City, began negotiations with Count Dooku to sell the crystal with the help of a Sugi weapons dealer. Dooku sent Grievous to acquire the massive Kyber crystal from the Sugi arms dealers led by Endenti on the neutral world of Utapau. Local Amani were used as bodyguards, and at least 2 Magna Guards were present initially, with more arriving later with Grievous. Jedi Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, investigating the mysterious death of Jedi Master Tuan, learned of the arms deal and tracked down the crystal, stealing it from the traffickers. Grievous was informed that the crystal was en route when the Sugi returned empty-handed. Aware that the crystal was in the Jedi's hands due to his Magna Guards scouting the area, Grievous decapitated Endenti without hesitation and set off in search of the 2 Jedi and the crystal, accompanied by several Magna Guards. A chase ensued in the caves of Utapau, ending when the cyborg general's speeder crashed into a horde of Viractals, allowing Anakin and Obi-Wan to flee to Pao City. Soon after, Governor Blum contacted Grievous, claiming he had captured the Jedi, and that the crystal was being placed into a separatist shuttle. However, by the time Grievous arrived, Anakin and Obi-Wan had escaped again. In a fit of rage, Grievous stabbed Blum with a lightsaber just as he was about to apologize, mocking his apologies and acknowledgement of error. The mission continued as they followed the crystal to space above Utapau. The Jedi chased the ship carrying the crystal, pursued by Grievous in his fighter and several droid fighters. The crystal was brought to a separatist supply ship, which the Jedi crashed their ship into the hyperdrive of. They abandoned their craft in escape pods and boarded the supply ship in different hangars. While Skywalker encountered little resistance, Kenobi had to deal with the crystal's droid escort. After Kenobi cut down several battle droids, Grievous and 2 vulture droids entered the hangar. Kenobi demanded his nemesis surrender, leading to a brief duel in which Grievous quickly overpowered Kenobi, resulting in Obi-Wan's capture. As Grievous prepared an execution chamber for Kenobi, battle droids secured the crystal, placing it in the ship's vault. Skywalker eventually freed Kenobi, and they reclaimed the crystal. They learned that the crystal could fire back energy, such as laser fire, which they used to fight their way to the hangar. After securing a ship, Obi-Wan had several AATs fire at the crystal, causing it to overload. The crystal's explosion destroyed the ship, but Grievous pursued the Jedi and his fighter. The pair ultimately escaped into hyperspace as the explosion grew, destroying the Separatist fleet above the planet and flinging Grievous into space in his starfighter. With the destruction of the massive Kyber crystal, Grievous once again failed to fulfill the tasks assigned by his ruthless superior. Within months of the arms deal, the Confederacy launched a secret invasion on Utapau, which Grievous took part in. During this invasion, the general's preferred vehicle was a TSMU-6 personal wheelbike. The Utapau peoples, hoping that the defeat of Grievous and the loss of the crystal would restore obscurity to their world, were disappointed. Grievous returned with an occupying force, leading thousands of battle droids and Magna Guard detachments, and refused to be confronted by the planet's ruling Utapau committee. The Separatist High Command had selected Utapau as a hiding place for the Executive Separatist Council and decided to seek safety there. Grievous ordered his Magna Guards to kill all the members of the Council, much to Tion Medon's horror. With the threat of immediate destruction over the Pauans and Utai, the port administrator had no choice but to comply with Grievous's demands, and a small Confederate base was established in Pao City, where the Separatist Council was safely hidden under Darth Sidious's orders. Before long, a massive modified core ship had taken over much of the city's Level 10, serving as the command center for the Separatist droid forces. Grievous was later spotted with Dooku on the Separatist capital planet of Rexus Secundus, where Dooku was receiving the Raxian Humanitarian Award. As head of security, Grievous briefly engaged in combat with Quinlan Vos, who was there on a Jedi Council mission to kill Dooku. Vos ambushed Grievous and his droids to prevent them from aiding Dooku, who was under attack by Ventress, Vos' partner in the assassination. As Grievous reached for his lightsabers, Vos used the Force to seize them first, prompting Grievous to charge. Vos sliced off Grievous's left hand, which still clutched a comlink. Grievous then spread all 4 arms wide and charged again, but Vos evaded his grasp. After Vos locked Grievous in a chamber, the general pounded on the walls, trying to escape. Breaking free from the chamber, Grievous confronted Vos, who kicked both Dooku and Grievous, causing the cyborg to tumble over a railing, dragging Ventress down with him. Grievous pinned Ventress with his foot on her throat, throwing her to a lower level. Ventress, injured and weaponless, charged at Grievous and managed to kick him back. She then used the Force to retrieve Vos's lightsaber and fought off the battle droids before turning her attention to Grievous, who found his lightsabers missing. Grievous ordered his droids to detain her and went to assist Dooku. Shortly after, Grievous returned with reinforcements, capturing Vos while Ventress escaped. Following Maul's escape from Sidious and his retreat to the Death Watch-controlled moon of Zanbar, Grievous was ordered by Dooku to hunt down Maul. Dooku instructed him to direct his entire droid fleet against Maul's Shadow Collective, but not to kill him, aiming to draw out Mother Talzin, Maul's mother. Though Grievous found it foolish to spare Maul, Dooku reminded him not to question Sidious's plans. Grievous moved his fleet to Zanbar and launched an attack, beginning the Battle of Zanbar. Despite low odds of victory, Grievous deployed his droids and watched the battle from a landing craft. Spotting Maul, he sent 4 IG-100 Magna Guards to weaken him before engaging in combat himself. Maul defeated the Magna Guards and fought Grievous, with neither gaining the upper hand. Grievous taunted Maul, declaring the battle lost. Maul then ordered firebombs to be dropped, depleting both factions' resources. Realizing Zanbar was lost, Maul retreated in a gauntlet fighter. Grievous contacted Dooku to report that Maul was on the run, earning Dooku's congratulations. Grievous knew their true target was Talzin, though he did not understand her value to Maul. Dooku assured him that all would be revealed as their plans unfolded. After departing Zanbar, Dooku rendezvoused with Grievous, assembling the fleet upon receiving intelligence from separatist spies that Mandalorian warships were gathering on Ord Mantell, indicating Maul's alliance with the Black Sun. Grievous again questioned Dooku's obsession with eliminating Mother Talzin. Dooku explained that Talzin was a far older and more dangerous entity than Grievous realized, one that must be eradicated to prevent interference with Darth Sidious's plans. Grievous's super-tactical droid Tezuka reported that a lone transport shuttle had departed Dathomir and was possibly headed for Ord Mantell. Believing Talzin was aboard, Dooku ordered the fleet to move to Ord Mantell. Upon arrival, Grievous commanded the fleet to bombard the city from orbit. As the city lay in ruins, the landing crafts began their assault. Grievous suspected something was amiss when he saw no Mandalorian warships, but Tezuka suggested they had been destroyed before lifting off. Grievous, however, anticipated a sneak attack, which soon materialized as gauntlet fighters emerged from behind Ord Mantell's moon, ambushing the separatist fleet. Realizing he had fallen into a trap, Grievous was informed by Tezuka that a fighter had attached itself to the hull of his ship. Before the droid could finish, Maul intervened, giving Grievous an ultimatum: shut down the battle droids or face death. Dismissing Maul's threats, Grievous was tackled by Maul, crashing into a transparasteel viewport. Dooku was also captured. Maul contacted Sidious via hologram from Vizsla Keep 09, threatening to kill both Grievous and Dooku unless Sidious met Talzin's demands. Sidious refused, stating he had no use for them. Instead of killing them, Maul ordered Grievous to the brig. Grievous warned Dooku that he might add the Count's lightsaber to his collection if they met again. Dooku later used the Force to unlock Grievous's cell, allowing the cyborg to escape, killing the Mandalorian guards and several others while searching for an escape route. Finding an escape pod, Grievous ejected and escaped from Maul. Shortly after, Grievous regrouped with Darth Sidious aboard the Scimitar and headed to Dathomir, where Dooku's signals were emanating. Sidious ordered Grievous to cloak the ship and land on Dathomir's surface. They approached a chamber holding a stone column that was the heart of Talzin's power. Grievous blew open the chamber wall, entered and declared his intent to kill Maul. Dooku, now possessed by Talzin, appeared. Grievous attacked Maul, while Sidious used Force Lightning to free Dooku from Talzin's control. Talzin materialized in the flesh as Sidious declared her fate. Maul used the Force to push Grievous out of the chamber. Sidious and Dooku attacked Talzin with Force Lightning while she defended Maul and herself with magic. As Talzin weakened, she threw Maul into his ship. Grievous re-entered, striding towards the collapsing Talzin, and plunged his lightsabers through her chest, killing her. As Grievous struck down Talzin, her magics dissipated, ending her quest for power. The droid army attacked the nearby Night Brother village, and Sidious congratulated Dooku and Grievous, noting Maul's future was erased while theirs was secure. Following these events, the Confederacy launched an effort to retake Christophsis, seeking revenge for its previous defeat. Ventress suspected Grievous's involvement and informed the Jedi Council while allying with the Jedi and Quinlan Vos to kill Dooku again. However, their efforts failed as Dooku escaped, and Ventress was mortally wounded while saving Vos from Force Lightning. Grievous rescued Dooku and Vos redeemed himself. Towards the war's end, the Crispus Commons bomb shelter was constructed to protect against possible attacks from Grievous or Dooku on the Crispus Commons veteran facility on Gorse. Grievous engaged Jedi General Depa Bilaba on Harun Kal. where his forces annihilated her clone troops. He personally fought Bilaba in a duel, nearly ending her life. 6 months after his victory over Bilaba, Rackham Seer and General Cleave discussed a plan to attack the Jedi Temple on Coruscant and destroy its central tower. They had paid the Duros bounty hunter Cad Bane, who had infiltrated the temple a year prior, for the necessary information. While Cleave opposed Seer's plan, seeing it as a suicide mission, Grievous supported Rackham, commending his patriotism. He argued that if the tower fell, both the Republic and the Separatists would see that neither the Jedi Order nor the Republic were invincible, potentially changing the war's course. He and Cleave then sent their top explosives expert, Captain Rackham Seer, to carry out the bombing on the Jedi Temple. Following Captain Seer's mission failure, Grievous went to Cardoa with Cleave and Seer's brother, Colonel Coben Seer. There he observed Bilaba leading the Republic forces and declared that she must die. However, Cleave warned against letting his obsession with killing Jedi become a distraction and advised against attacking before heading to Kala. Grievous then left for Mygeeto, leaving Colonel Seer to handle Bilaba and her forces. Grievous awaited Bilaba and her forces on Mygeeto, where he and Colonel Seer confronted her and her apprentice, Caleb Doom. During the third battle of Mygeeto, Grievous initially overwhelmed her forces with dozens of battle droids by destroying the Mesa bridges. However, Skull Squadron's Fang fighters, led by Skull leader Fen Rao, intervened and destroyed the battle droids. While Seer faced Doom, Grievous dueled Bilaba, wielding 2 lightsabers and striking her repeatedly. He expressed his belief that he had already defeated her and would not make the same mistake of not verifying her death. Bilaba blocked his strikes, stating that she was no longer the same person and could defeat him, then hit Grievous with a force push. Grievous resumed their battle, activating 2 more lightsabers. His attacks narrowly missed her and she parried, managing to cut off 2 of his hands. Despite this, Grievous slashed her with one of his remaining lightsabers, severely injuring her. Bilaba continued to fight until Doom, Commander Styles and Captain Grey arrived to help her, opening fire on Grievous. Doom tended to Bilaba while Styles and Grey provided cover fire. Grievous deflected their blaster bolts with his spinning lightsabers, but was forced to retreat before Bilaba and Doom could surround him. Sliding down from the structure with his lightsabers, he regretfully allowed her to live. After Grievous fled, leaving Mygeeto to the Republic, Bilaba did not order a pursuit, having learned to live with her remorse. Ultimately, the Republic held all the momentum during the 3rd year of the war. Despite General Grievous's successes on Dathomir, Florum and elsewhere, the Separatists were driven out of the core and colonies, into the Mid-Rim and Outer Rim by the Republic. In the Outer Rim Sieges campaign, the Republic military maintained pressure by blockading several key Separatist worlds in that region, hoping to force a surrender. As the Republic aimed to end the war, these sieges grew increasingly significant. The Separatists suffered from structural geographical weaknesses, unable to use the Hydean way to reinforce worlds across the galaxy, and restricted by the Hutt's control of the Triellus trade route. This made it extremely difficult for the Confederacy to move troops and supplies between their spinward and trailing territories. The Separatists were especially vulnerable to the Republic's coordinated sieges, which drained the Separatist Council's fighting spirit. Coruscant remained well defended, but its fleet was weakened due to deployments elsewhere in the Outer Rim. It seemed unthinkable that no one would attack them by surprise. When the Nexus route coordinates were kept safe, preventing the Separatists from attacking the capital directly, it appeared the threat had disappeared. However, the Jedi Order was unaware that sharing the coordinates with Supreme Chancellor Palpatine essentially sent the knowledge directly to their enemies. With the Separatists on the verge of defeat, a major victory was required to break the Republic's will and the power of its assaults. Then Count Dooku informed Grievous that Darth Sidious had obtained the coordinates for Grievous and his fleet to leap from the Outer Rim directly to Coruscant. Along with a plan to kidnap the Supreme Chancellor, it seemed the CIS could recover and emerge victorious. Gathering his forces for an attack on the core's heart, Grievous believed such an attack would recall Republic forces participating in the Outer Rim sieges, removing or at least rendering the blockades permeable. It was a risky gamble that, if successful, could signal the end of the conflict. Towards the end of the war, a Separatist surrender seemed imminent, but the sieges continued as Grievous launched a massive offensive, pushing the Republic to the brink. The Jedi Council sent its generals far from the core worlds to support the beleaguered clones in response to this overwhelming attack. But many fronts remained open. At one point during the sieges, Grievous was aboard the bridge of a starship. During the sieges, he attempted to take control of the shipyards on the planet Anaxes, located at the coreward edge of the Outer Rim, where the Republic owned several crucial shipyards. This led to a lengthy and bloody battle led by separatist forces under the Arch-Admiral Trench. Additionally, Grievous played a decisive role in the conflict between the Wookiees and the CIS. For the separatists, Kashyyyk was a key location because it was easy to defend and served as an excellent landing strip for droids. Grievous was primarily interested in the Klaatuvac Guild archives, which contained many unknown space routes. His battle droids aggressively persuaded the Wookiees to join the separatists. The separatists decided to focus all their efforts on Kashyyyk, a coastal city situated amidst freshwater lakes in the Wawat archipelago. After struggling to find a suitable entry point for the invasion, the Trade Federation managed to gather their troops in the Wawat archipelago, taking advantage of the hollows in the tree canopy and the few areas of open ground. The Federation considered it a great starting point for a ground campaign because it was not protected by thick forests like other Wookiee cities in the interior and was more accessible to orbital attacks. Initially, the Wookiees attempted to remain neutral in the conflict, but the importance of the planet compelled both sides to negotiate with the royal families of Kashyyyk to try and persuade them to join their cause. After a long wait for a favorable decision, Grievous became impatient and directed a large-scale attack, hoping the threat would persuade the Wookiees to accept the conditions posed by Count Dooku and his allies. However, this decision proved to be a dire mistake for the Confederacy, as the Wookiees responded angrily, declaring an all-out war on the forces threatening to attack them, kicking off the Battle of Kashyyyk. The failed attack on Kashyyy's refinery began with an invasion of the planet, following their occupation, in an effort to reverse their declining fortunes in the war, with help from the Klaatuvac Guild's information. The Confederacy's deployment of a secret force of battle droids and warships filled Kashyyyk's night sky with a harsh light as they arrived, which became visible to the Wookiee natives on the surface. With the Republic military busy with the Outer Rim sieges raging across the galaxy's spiral arms, Coruscant was left with fewer defenses. Confident Republic strategists were unconcerned, but Sidious arranged for Grievous to launch a massive assault to capture his own alter ego, Supreme Chancellor Sheev Palpatine. Grievous, however, was entirely unaware of Palpatine's real identity. Dooku had earlier relocated his command post to Grievous's flagship, the Invisible Hand, to stay close to Grievous and ensure his orders were carried out. Despite the cyborg general posing no real threat to the Sith Master, Sidious wanted no setbacks to his plans. Grievous and his forces emerged from hyperspace with hundreds of C-9979 landing craft and thousands of Vulture droid and droid tri-fighter escorts. They swept toward the planet's surface, opening fire on the fleet of ships guarding Coruscant and wreaking destruction on the planet. The Coruscant Home Defense Fleet was caught off guard, and in the chaos, Grievous and a strike team landed on Coruscant's surface. Within minutes, many Republic Star Destroyers were reduced to fiery rubble, with the Invisible Hand accounting for a large percentage of the casualties. In space, droid tri-fighters quickly decimated Republic Aerik 170 fighter squadrons, while droid fighters on the surface supported battle droids with their passes, immobilizing Jedi Masters Yoda and Mace Windu long enough for Grievous to act. Amidst the chaos and panic, Dooku remained in orbit and directed the aerial attack on Coruscant. Grievous brought dozens of large forces of Magna Guards with him to distract any Jedi during his escape. He took advantage of the chaos to make a shuttle landing, flew down to the planet, and landed in the Executive District. Grievous then appeared in Palpatine's apartment, accompanied by his Electrostaff-equipped Magna Guards. Despite Shaak Ti and Roron Korob's best efforts to protect Palpatine, Grievous fought through layers of Republic security forces, including clone troopers and Jedi protectors, to secure Palpatine, eliminating anyone who stood in his way. He killed Jedi Master Roron Korob, claiming his lightsaber, and incapacitated Shakti, taking her weapon as well. Grievous then took the Chancellor and carried him away aboard his flagship, the Invisible Hand, leading him to the waiting Dooku in the communications tower, where Dooku took charge of keeping Palpatine captive. Grievous was also warned by Dooku that the Jedi would stage a rescue mission. By the time the Coruscant home fleet had finally established assault positions, Grievous had already captured Palpatine and returned to his flagship. Before Grievous could escape into hyperspace with the captured Chancellor, Republic reinforcements arrived, targeting the Invisible Hand. The home fleet moved to prevent Grievous from reaching a jump point, keeping the Invisible Hand in the midst of the battle. A rescue squad led by Kenobi and Skywalker, who had rushed to Coruscant from Yavana upon learning of Grievous's attack, raced to board the Invisible Hand while Commander Honor Salima of the home fleet rallied her vessels to stop the Separatists from escaping. Amid the battle, Kenobi, Skywalker and Clone Flight Squad 7 raced forward despite squadrons of droid fighters confronting them, resulting in many clone pilots being shot down. The two Jedi managed to board the Invisible Hand and headed toward its conning tower to save Palpatine. Upon returning to the bridge, Grievous was informed of the Jedi incursion by his Neimoidian captain, but merely laughed at how Dooku's prediction had come true. Fighting past the battle droids, the two Jedi reached Palpatine and confronted Dooku, whose presence proved fortunate for the Republic. Skywalker bested Dooku and killed him on Palpatine's orders, delivering a major blow to the CIS. Meanwhile, the Invisible Hand was surrounded by Home Fleet Strike Group 5 under Lorth Nida, who demanded its surrender. Nida did not believe Grievous's claims that Palpatine was a prisoner on board. Although he gave the cyborg 10 minutes to prove himself before his ships opened fire, Grievous did not surrender. Informed by one of his pilots that they had located the Jedi in hallway 328, Grievous had them trapped within a ray shield and escorted to the bridge by droids. In a moment that filled Grievous with satisfaction, Obi-Wan and Anakin were marched onto his bridge in electrobonds. An command battle droid handed the two lightsabers to Grievous, who took them in his metal claws and weighed them. He enjoyed looking down on his prisoners, relishing the terror in their eyes as they wondered what awful weapons were hidden behind his long cloak. Grievous and Anakin Skywalker finally met face to face, both mocking one another, with Skywalker angering him in the process. Grievous swept his cape back, revealing the lightsabers hanging from its lining, boasting that adding their lightsabers would make an excellent addition to his collection. Still unaware that Dooku had been killed, Grievous was thrilled to have captured his old adversary Kenobi and the legendary Skywalker. He was already celebrating his control over the entire fleet when he was briefly distracted by Skywalker's droid, R2-D2. Using this opportunity, Obi-Wan retrieved his weapon using the Force and freed himself and Anakin. The two Jedi were now free, standing back to back and fending off blaster fire from the surrounding droids. Some crew members were hit by blaster shots, and Grievous did not intend to suffer the same fate. He was willing to let the Jedi tire themselves out battling the droids. Then he approached one of the ship's pilots and ordered them to keep the ship in orbit and not to deal with the Jedi. Ironically, Grievous's battle droids dragged the Chancellor to safety, while the Jedi focused on dealing with the General's bodyguards. Obi-Wan and Anakin, now accustomed to dealing with even frick alloy electrostaff-wielding Magna Guards, destroyed IG-101 and IG-102, leaving them free to corner Grievous. The ship's gravity abruptly altered, and within minutes the ceiling became the floor. A few droids responded swiftly enough to magnetize themselves, but the majority joined the Jedi, who seized the chance to dismember a handful of them. A Neimoidian pilot, in terror, announced that the ship was disintegrating. Grievous realized there was no purpose in staying to win this battle and decided it was best to let the Jedi perish with the ship. Suddenly the gravity returned to normal, and the Jedi plummeted to the floor and ran toward the Kashyyyk general. Almost all the droids had vanished, and now they were pursuing him. The Chancellor was quickly rescued for the second time, and Grievous was trapped on his own bridge. Realizing the odds were against him, the general declared that Kenobi had lost and shattered the front window of the cruiser with an electrostaff. The cyborg was dragged into space as the compressed air inside the ship rushed into the vacuum, while Obi-Wan and Anakin fought to avoid being sucked out. Kenobi, Skywalker, and the Chancellor managed to stay in the ship, but Grievous was pulled into space. Using a grappling hook built into his arm and his clawed feet to latch onto the hull of the ship, Grievous climbed back on board to reach the escape pods. As he moved along the smooth metal, he remarked to himself how easy it was to have a droid body. The Separatist commander took off and rapidly flew away in his escape pod from the wreckage of his flagship, abandoning everyone on board. Grievous usually employed the Soulless One as a means of escape, but since he didn't have the fighter available at the Battle of Coruscant, it worked in his favor, as he would have lost it along with his flagship, the Invisible Hand. At that time, his personal fighter had spent months on a small landing platform on Utapau. This way, Anakin and Obi-Wan discovered that he had survived by doubling back and grabbing an escape pod. The Trade Federation shuttles were close enough to pick him up, and the clone fighters were too preoccupied with attacking his droids to notice him. Grievous's escape pod was recovered by the Lucrehulk-class battleship Profusion. With Palpatine out of his grasp, Grievous ordered his forces to flee and led the 2/3 of his armada capable of fleeing into hyperspace. With a significant portion of the Separatist fleet having suffered major damages in the battle over Coruscant, much of the Navy was decimated and could not follow Grievous to safety. Following Dooku's unexpected death, which dealt a major blow to the Separatist cause, Grievous succeeded him as head of state, turning the Supreme Commander into the leader of the entire Separatist alliance. While Grievous had always commanded the droid army, his promotion now gave him complete control over Separatist forces, both military and political. Despite the advantages of his new position, Grievous remained subservient to Sidious, whom he continued to loyally serve. After the Jedi thwarted his kidnapping of Palpatine, Grievous ordered a brutal, though clearly desperate, counterattack across numerous star systems, even though the CIS had largely been forced onto the defensive as the Outer Rim sieges continued. The legions of battle droids under Grievous's command were severely depleted, whereas the Republic continued to secure more victories across the galaxy. In the final weeks of the Clone Wars, Grievous, ever the faithful servant to Sidious, was ordered to return to Utapau in the Outer Rim to safeguard the increasingly irrelevant Separatist Council. In reality, Sidious had other plans for Grievous, who failed to realize he was being deceived once again. The cyborg's remaining role in the Sith Lord's schemes was to act as bait, to draw Kenobi away from Coruscant and Anakin Skywalker. With his grand plan to bring down the Republic and the Jedi Order in motion, Darth Sidious did not care if Grievous or Kenobi lived or died. Grievous particularly disliked Utapau, a planet where he had been humiliated by Kenobi and Skywalker during the Kyber crystal endeavor, and regarded its people as wretched worms. Nonetheless, he returned to the planet in his personal Sheathipede-class transport shuttle with some forces, deriving some satisfaction by taking the Pauan leaders hostage and beginning to transform their capital into a droid factory. Grievous took over a large portion of the city and held the populace captive, threatening them with fiery annihilation if they revealed his existence. Upon arrival, his droids informed him that the planet was under his command. Uninterested and focused on his mission to speak to the Separatist Council, the cyborg did not have to wait long for Sidious to contact him. One of his Magna Guards informed him that someone was trying to reach him. Under Sidious's direct order, Grievous was to relocate the Council to the planet Mustafar, with Sidious promising that the end of the war was near. Wondering if Sidious, despite his greatness, realized what the raid on Coruscant had cost their cause, Grievous asked if Dooku's death impacted the coming end. Sidious seemed unconcerned, reassuring Grievous that Dooku's death was a necessary loss, and that he would soon have a new, younger, and more powerful apprentice. Sidious also instructed him to remain on Utapau until the new apprentice had joined their cause, emphasizing the need to avoid any delays in finding a replacement. After the communication ended, Grievous remained deep in thought for some time. Had he known Sidious's plans, he might have found it easier to share his confidence. Grievous remained uncertain about his new role. General Grievous was hiding in the Outer Rim, and the Jedi Council had scoured all the Republic systems but found no sign of him, and recommended searching the outlying systems despite having few ships available. Given Dooku's recent death and the Republic's significant victories, capturing or killing Grievous took on new urgency. Though such missions had been attempted before, eliminating Grievous now seemed key to crippling the CIS military and ending the war. Days after the Battle of Coruscant, the Republic received word that Grievous was hiding on Utapau. Sidious, under his alter ego Chancellor Palpatine, claimed to Skywalker that clone intelligence had located the general. With the war nearing its end, Sidious no longer needed Grievous as his pawn, as the cyborg had played his role. All of Grievous's campaign served to distract the Jedi Order from the Sith conspiracy unfolding on Coruscant. Grievous's bloodthirsty rampage was finally set to end, and he would soon pay for his arrogance in believing he could dominate the Jedi. Although Palpatine advised the Jedi Council to send Skywalker to confront Grievous, they felt a Jedi Master with more experience was needed, with the Council also viewing Skywalker as little more than Palpatine's puppet. Thus, Kenobi was sent to confront Grievous. After discussing his plan with Cody and other members of the 212th, Kenobi recognized that finding Grievous on Utapau was a chance to deal a major, if not fatal, blow to the Separatist army. Promising to notify Cody as soon as he confirmed Grievous's presence, Kenobi arrived on Utapau, where he was met by Tion Medon, a senior member of the Utapauan government who, despite his calm demeanor, was under significant pressure. Medon whispered that Grievous was present and holding the populace hostage with numerous battle droids, further declaring Grievous a force to be reckoned with. Kenobi's arrival was watched by a Magna Guard and 2 B-1 battle droids, but Kenobi sent his starfighter away under R4-G9's control to trick the Separatists into thinking he had departed. Meanwhile, on Level 10, Grievous watched the Separatist Council members with disgust. Unknowingly watched by Kenobi, Grievous directed the Council to safety on Mustafar, rebuffing Gunray, whom he threatened when the Viceroy openly doubted his ability to keep them safe. With the Council departing and having earned satisfaction from demonstrating Gunray's weakness, Grievous waited for his Jedi enemy to arrive, hoping he would not have to wait long. Suddenly, Kenobi revealed himself by jumping into the middle of the room and greeting the general. With his Magna Guards and other battle droids around him, Grievous exuded a gloating sense of confidence. Applauding Kenobi's audacity, Grievous ordered his bodyguards to kill the Jedi Master, who handily defeated all 4 Magna Guards. Grievous's droid army then moved to fire on Kenobi, but were called off by the general, who decided to engage Kenobi himself to wash away the shame of their previous confrontation and prove his value to Sidious. Unknowingly, Grievous had played directly into Kenobi's hands as the Jedi General waited for Cody and the 212th to arrive. Due to their many prior clashes, Kenobi was well prepared for the duel and determined to prevent Grievous from escaping in a fight that was clearly not going to be easy. Given permission by Kenobi to make the first move, Grievous unveiled 4 lightsabers, all of which were powerful weapons from Jedi he had previously defeated, and laughed. One of his primary 4 lightsabers in the duel was none other than Shaak Ti's. Kenobi steeled himself with the promise not to let Grievous add his own lightsaber to the collection, and thus began a duel along a walkway suspended above the hangar's lower levels. Grievous stomped forward and utilized a spectacular fighting maneuver, spinning 2 of the blades over his head to form a lethal shield while dragging the other 2 along the ground, burning the floor and sending sparks toward Obi-Wan as he stalked closer, his weapons a blur of light. Grievous was thrilled to take on Kenobi in what they both believed to be their final battle, thinking he was the better fighter. However, his presumption would prove incorrect. Initially, Obi-Wan slowly took a step back, but he overcame his fear and allowed the Force to guide him. Waiting for the right moment, he struck his lightsaber between Grievous's flashing blades and battled bravely, slashing another attack from him. Though the Jedi deflected the blow, he knew he could not keep up that pace for long and switched tactics. He leapt, flipping over Grievous while the cyborg's other 2 blades stabbed where he once stood, and the Jedi landed behind him. Grievous turned and faced the opposite direction, then attacked him. Kenobi took advantage of the general's surprise to swirl past his defense, blocking and ducking his violent strikes repeatedly. Kenobi limited Grievous to moving along the catwalk, neutralizing Grievous's usual more wide-ranging fighting style. Keeping the fight close to the cyborg, Kenobi drew on the knowledge he had gained from their numerous duels, having become familiar with Grievous's tricks and movements after so many encounters. He stayed composed, aimed wisely at Grievous's vulnerable wrist, and sliced off one of the cyborg's hands, which clattered down onto the deck along with the lightsaber it held. Grievous backed away, staring in surprise at his smoking stump. Furious and losing focus, Grievous launched a wild attack, advancing with his spinning weapon at his opponent, but Obi-Wan continually deflected it. In a matter of seconds, the laughter died in his artificial throat as yet another hand was severed and fell to the deck, releasing the lightsaber it had wielded. With all but 2 lightsabers and the hands that held them lost, the fight evened out, and the cyborg's situation began to fall apart. As Obi-Wan gained the upper hand and maintained the lead, Grievous was forced back further and further. The surrounding droids, who had been watching their leader continue to lose ground, were suddenly unable to assist Grievous in fighting back, when, right on cue, the 212th ambushed the Separatists, filling the air with a hail of blaster bolts. Swarms of LABATI gunships descended into the sinkhole, and clone troopers rappelled down from the gantries overhead. Fighting erupted all over Paw City between droid and clone forces, who were further backed by the local Utapau resistance. The unexpected and furious onslaught by the 212th Battalion threw the Separatist droid forces into such disarray that they barely had time to organize an effective defense of their positions in Paw City. Obi-Wan was disappointed if he had any hope for Grievous to surrender. Instead, while the troopers engaged the battle droids, Grievous resumed the duel and gloated that with or without an army, Kenobi was doomed, despite the surrounding chaos. Undaunted before his opponent could adapt, Kenobi blasted the general with a tremendous force push, propelling him forcefully into the air to crash into a hanging cargo module from the ceiling. The impact knocked the lightsabers out of his hands while Grievous slipped past the floor's edge and tumbled to the lowest level. Stunned and completely disarmed, the cyborg landed hard but survived, hunched like a spider. Defeated, and realizing that the odds were turning against him, Grievous saw an opportunity to adopt his usual tactic of fleeing a battle that had turned against him. He went directly for his waiting wheelbike as Obi-Wan hurried down to the site where Grievous had fallen, arriving just in time to see his opponent shoot away at the controls of his wheelbike. While he failed to crush Obi-Wan, who had barely made the leap to the lower level, he unleashed havoc on any clone troopers in his path. Kenobi was well aware that Grievous thought he could flee while his droids stalled him, but he chased after the fleeing cyborg relentlessly throughout the hangar, pushing one trooper aside with his bike's legs, then grabbing 2 more clones and throwing them into a sinkhole as he sped past, and landing on the outer hull of the core ship that served as the Separatist base. The general's bike handled the shift in terrain in stride. Soon after, the Varactyl-mounted Kenobi trailed closely behind Grievous on the skin of the core ship, struggling without the magnetic adhesion Grievous' wheelbike possessed. Kenobi even lost his lightsaber in the chaos. While the prospect of fighting the cyborg without his lightsaber was certainly unsettling, Kenobi did not stop to retrieve it so as to not give Grievous a chance to escape. Commander Cody recovered the weapon and reported the state of the battle back to the Jedi Council at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, letting them know that Kenobi had tracked down and confronted the cyborg general on Utapau. Mace Windu then had Anakin Skywalker deliver the news to Chancellor Palpatine and wait for his reaction, fearful that they would need to take control of the Republic from the Chancellor. Pursued by Kenobi on a Varactyl named Boga, Grievous attempted to flee to the Soulless One on its landing platform, which was a distance away from the main Separatist base. Surrounded by blaster fire and explosions, Grievous moved as if the road was clear, avoiding any collisions or crushing anyone in his path. Through increasingly packed tunnels, Grievous was forced to slow down to avoid a swarm of droids, whereas Kenobi's mount, capable of feats the general's wheelbike could not, moved to the tunnel's ceiling to avoid traffic congestion. Kenobi thus gained ground on Grievous in the chase for the landing platform, accelerating once more and catching up to the general. Obi-Wan had just caught up with the general when the Separatist leader, able to control his bike and battle simultaneously, grabbed an electrostaff from its mount and began attacking Kenobi. Obi-Wan was able to take the general's staff and attempt a few stabs of his own, but Grievous grasped the weapon and drew both it and the Jedi over to him. While the Jedi and the Separatist fought on the bike, Boga backed off while remaining in pursuit. The two opponents struggled for the upper hand as the wheel bike careened through narrow canyons and sharp turns. With the staff being wrestled for, Grievous drew his blaster, the Grievance striker. Obi-Wan dodged, but Grievous lost control of the bike during the struggle, flipping the two combatants off before the bike flew into one of Utapau's many sinkhole abysses and exploded upon impact with the ground far below. Having arrived at the landing platform, both opponents recovered quickly, with Grievous lifting the blaster as Obi-Wan snatched the electrostaff. Kenobi knocked the gun out of Grievous's hand and landed a few blows on the general himself, bending but not breaking the cyborg's metal. Grievous was knocked to the ground and Obi-Wan plunged the staff into his abdomen, but the cyborg kicked Kenobi clear, sending the staff flying from his grip with such speed that the Jedi could not stop it. With no weapons, the two engaged in hand-to-hand combat, which Grievous was coldly confident of winning. Grievous closed in with his second swing, knocking Kenobi back against the Soulless One, putting Obi-Wan at a disadvantage. Utilizing his considerable strength to defeat Kenobi, the cyborg general's physical prowess appeared to give him an edge. Grievous continued his assault, lifting Kenobi and narrowly missing the Jedi's head with a terrifyingly powerful punch that heavily dented the starfighter. However, noticing that one of Grievous's plates was loose, Kenobi took advantage by grabbing the metal plates and pulling with all his might, managing to rip open Grievous's chest plates to expose his gut sac. Alarmed, Grievous tossed Kenobi aside. Wounded but far from defeated, Grievous moved toward Obi-Wan, chuckling, and attempted to crush him with his mechanical feet. Kenobi attempted to knock down Grievous with a force-enhanced kick to the leg. However, Kenobi's kick only succeeded in hurting himself. Grievous laughed even louder, hurling Kenobi off the landing platform and gloating over his apparent victory. However, the Jedi used the Force to manipulate his position and caught hold of the edge. Grievous approached the spot where Kenobi was struggling to lift himself back to safety, dangling above the bottomless pit of the city. Confident that his greatest adversary would perish, Grievous charged at Kenobi with an electrostaff to finish him off. However, Kenobi summoned Grievous's blaster, which had been abandoned a few meters away and forgotten by its owner, with the Force. Despite Grievous's powerful armor, an inevitable end was still on the horizon. In defense of his own life, Kenobi took careful aim and shot Grievous 5 times in his exposed gut sac through the gaps in his chest armor, igniting the fluid that kept his organs alive. Grievous' remaining biological components ignited, spectacularly incinerating the famed cyborg from the inside. Screaming in pain, Grievous let out a sound halfway between a choke and a metallic rustle before a series of explosions and flames tore apart his body, blasting out of his eye sockets. With that, Grievous was dead. His few organic remains proved to be his downfall as they were devoured by fierce fire, destroying him. The cyborg's lifeless body collapsed onto the hangar floor, leaving behind a smoldering, empty, blackened metal shell, hitting the ground with a clang. No longer motivated by life, hatred, or a desire to destroy, Grievous' reign of terror had come to an end at the hands of Kenobi. After so many attempts during the previous years, Kenobi had ended his menace in a fitting, if sad, manner for a being whose obsession with physical prowess had rendered him unrecognizable. Indeed, all that remained of Grievous was the lifeless shell of his cyborg remains. The so-called improvements he had sacrificed so much for were left abandoned. Kenobi walked to the empty shell and threw down the blaster in disgust, considering it a very uncivilized method. He spared his rival one more look, breathed a sigh of relief, and returned to the battle aboard his awaiting Varactyl. The news of Grievous's death made it seem like victory was inevitable for the Republic forces. Still, Kenobi did not have time to elaborate, and instead encouraged the clones to launch an offensive against the now leaderless droids. With Grievous killed by Obi-Wan Kenobi, the beleaguered droids were further stunned, but continued to fight the clones, who were commanded to take control of the planet. Without a clear front to fight on and disarray in the line of command, the droids were reduced to small pockets of resistance that were quickly overwhelmed. With Grievous's death, the conflict that had claimed countless lives seemed to be coming to a conclusion. The end of the war appeared to be in sight, but the Jedi did not suspect that it would also mark the beginning of their downfall. Across the battlefields, Jedi generals felt victory. Meanwhile, on Mustafar, the Separatist Council cowered, unaware that they had one more fatal part to play in the Sith plan. With Darth Sidious's true identity revealed to Anakin, the Jedi Council received word of Grievous's death. As news of his death spread, Mace Windu and several other Jedi led an attempt to stop the Supreme Chancellor. They stormed into his office, giving Palpatine, who accepted General Grievous's destruction but was not surprised by the Jedi's early arrival, the opportunity to surrender and renounce the Senate's extraordinary powers. With Grievous's defeat on Utapau, the Separatist leadership collapsed, and the battle's outcome spread throughout the galaxy, informally ending the war despite numerous other fronts still being active. Unfortunately for Grievous, his wish to see a galaxy devoid of the Jedi Order was nearly fulfilled, but only after his death. Shortly after Grievous's demise, Sidious, in his guise as Chancellor Palpatine, ordered clone troopers across the galaxy to execute Order 66, turning them against their Jedi generals. Kenobi managed to escape his clone troopers and fled Utapau aboard Grievous's personal starfighter, the Soulless One, running past the smoking remains of his cyborg rival one final time without sparing Grievous a glance. After successfully communicating with Senator Bail Organa and boarding the Alderaanian diplomatic cruiser, the Tantive III, where Kenobi met Organa and Master Yoda, the starfighter remained docked in the hangar. As planned, the clones turned on their Jedi generals, seemingly setting the stage for a total Separatist victory. Gunray succeeded Grievous as Confederate head of state and commander of the droid army, believing the war was in his favor and that more power would be his, with both Separatist leaders dead. However, Sidious no longer had any use for the Confederacy. He dispatched his new apprentice Darth Vader, the very pupil he had mentioned to Grievous, to wipe out the Separatist Council. Vader, formerly Anakin Skywalker, had been turned to the dark side of the Force by Sidious. With the Jedi almost entirely destroyed, Sidious took credit for defeating the Separatists and transformed the Republic into the First Galactic Empire, placing the galaxy under Sith control for the first time in 1,000 years. After his encounter with Kenobi on Mustafar, Vader was left severely injured, barely alive, horribly scarred and broken. He underwent reconstructive surgery from various droids, including FX-6, the same droid that worked on Grievous's armor, to be encased in black armor equipped with mechanical limbs and life support systems. Much like Grievous, Darth Vader became more machine than a living being and was feared throughout the galaxy. Later, Kenobi flew Grievous's starfighter to Nar Shaddaa with a newborn passenger, Luke Skywalker, and sold the ship for transportation to Tatooine, subsequently bringing Luke to live with the Lars family. The ultimate fate of the Soulless One after this tragic occurrence remains unknown. Shortly after the formation of the Galactic Empire, Order 66 did not completely eliminate all Jedi in the galaxy. Darth Sidious completed an old notion with the formation of his long-planned project, the Imperial Inquisitors, an elite group of Force-sensitive Jedi hunters trained under Vader. Stripped of their identities and assigned numbers, the brothers and sisters of the Order of Inquisitors corrupted Jedi teachings in a way different from Grievous. Similar to how Grievous's mechanical hand could spin while wielding a weapon, the double-bladed lightsaber's semicircular guard allowed the blades to spin around the hilt automatically, increasing control over the weapon and forming a devastating circle of light. The Inquisitors hunted down Jedi just as Grievous had. As the Inquisitors and Vader pursued the last of the Jedi, forcing survivors into hiding, the Empire's lies flouted the Order's heritage. By 14 BBY, 5 years after the Empire took power, it was rumored that Vader was a counterpart to Grievous that Palpatine had been holding in reserve. During that year, Moff Wilhuff Tarkin returned to Coruscant to meet with Emperor Palpatine. While in the Imperial Palace, Rear Admiral Niels Tennant reunited with Tarkin and asked if he had been in the Western Reaches. Tarkin, who had actually been stationed at Sentinel Base as part of Project Stardust, claimed he had and was still hunting Grievous's former allies. Sometime between 19 BBY and 5 BBY, Maul, determined not to underestimate his enemies, scoured planets for advantages. One lead brought him to a Sith castle on the planet Damanos. Deep within the castle, he experienced a Force vision of Grievous, who claimed to be expecting him before attacking from the ceiling with his 4 lightsabers. Maul dodged in time, but the room darkened, allowing Grievous to almost blend into the shadows despite his ignited lightsabers. The vision mocked Maul, reminding him of their last face-to-face encounter when he murdered Maul's mother, and questioned how it felt to know that Kenobi killed him, robbing Maul of his revenge. Enraged, Maul struck at Grievous, disarming him of one lightsaber and pinning him down. The vision continued to taunt Maul, asking if knowing his mother's killer's death brought him peace. Maul, distracted, was kicked off the mechanical form. As Maul expected another attack, Grievous stood silently, provoking Maul's anger over his losses. Maul attacked again, but Grievous blocked every strike without counterattacking, continuing to mock him. The vision pushed Maul's emotions until the Sith warrior struck down Grievous, in the same manner the cyborg had killed his mother. The vision vanished, leaving Maul with no satisfaction as predicted. Count Dooku and General Grievous intended to eliminate the Night Sisters with their invasion, but a few witches survived into the Imperial era. Despite their failure to completely fulfill their purpose, Grievous's massacre was seen as the end of the Night Sisters, who had been unified under Talzin and crushed as an organization. Over the years, the survivors vowed to avenge their fallen sisters, who had been slaughtered by an armored warrior wielding a lightsaber, leading countless troops into battle for Dathomir's soul. In the aftermath of Order 66, fallen Jedi Taron Malicos lied to Night Sister Merrin, claiming the Jedi ordered the massacre to manipulate her into teaching him magic. 5 years after Order 66, Merrin learned the truth from Cal Kestis. Later, Kestis and his master Sere Junda told Merrin that Grievous was always a puppet of Emperor Palpatine, as were all Separatist leaders. Although she wished to enact revenge on those who destroyed her heart, Grievous's death forced Merrin to target Palpatine and his Imperials. Dathomir was all Merrin saw and felt when fighting the Empire, seeing Grievous's visage reflected in each stormtrooper helmet. Between 12 BBY and 11 BBY, on a mission to Murkana, she was reminded of her home with a flash of white making her think of Grievous, though she knew he was dead and would never return. In 2 BBY, Maul traveled to Dathomir with Ezra Bridger, claiming to be the last survivor of the slaughter. Sheelish, not present during the massacre, sometimes returned to Dathomir seeking information about her sister's fate. Her daughter Deathstick carried the knowledge that she could have been part of something greater, but it was taken from her. Enraged by her mother's death and the massacre of her people during the Clone Wars, Morgan Elsbeth, a human Night Sister, used her hatred to build her industry, ultimately strengthening the Imperial Navy during the Galactic Empire by plundering entire worlds of their resources. Obi-Wan Kenobi adopted the alias Ben and went into exile in the Jundland wastes on Tatooine, remaining in hiding for many years. He watched over and protected the young Luke Skywalker. During his time in hiding, after an argument with Owen Lars, Kenobi reflected on his confrontations with Count Dooku, General Grievous, and Darth Maul, realizing that danger seemed to follow him, but he always managed to eliminate it. Obi-Wan resolved that as long as he lived, Luke would be safe. Around 0 BBY, while waiting out a sandstorm on Tatooine, Kenobi wrote a set of journals, one of which reflected on the aftermath of the Battle of Hyperi and his thoughts on Grievous. Years after Grievous' death, an Imperial researcher named Silo began creating cybernetically enhanced individuals as potential replacements for Darth Vader as the Emperor's apprentice. One such individual, Carbin, had a cybernetic body installed by Dr. Kylo, who claimed to have been inspired by Grievous's body. While finding the design interesting, Silo considered it merely a first step compared to Carbin, who, like his predecessor, could wield 4 lightsabers simultaneously, making the Mon Calamari cyborg just as dangerous as the Separatist leader. Carbin had a notable difference, a propulsor built into his skeletal structure to give him an advantage in battle.